I think we'll have a few more popping in, but let's start. Nice to see you all today, and welcome to this fourth live session under the sort of title of MVP, Minimal Viable Products. So I'm gonna add one more here. So, but as always, we're gonna start with a quick look back at what we have done this week. And of course, the first thing we do is the check-in for today. So write in the chat today one item in the everyday life that you don't believe will be here in 20 years. Maybe 10, but you know, one of those things that everyone think we take for granted, that you believe will not be here. Write in the chat, and then you can also start to shout if you want to. Let's see what we have. PC, yeah. Anyone else? Laptop, computer. Yeah, smartphone will be. Electric scooter. Physical newspapers. Keyboard. Clicking mouses. Yeah. Anything else? Facsimile machine. Oh, it's still popular in Japan. Oh. Memory card. Plastic products, yeah. Plastic straws. Keep going. You can do more than one if you think of something. Fax is popular in Germany too. That's so interesting. Tissue paper, petrol cars, yeah. That's interesting. How about driver's license and wallets? Anyone else who gets any thoughts reading the chat? Ronja and Nung and newcomers, we're checking in with one item in the everyday life that we believe will not be here in maybe 20 years. That's sort of very, very common now. Keys, yeah, that's interesting, right? Everything you mentioned, and maybe besides the facts, but it's so many things around many of these things too that sort of also might be affected. It's very much less cables, yeah. But very interesting to do this exercise and also think about things then that also could be digitalized if you turn it around, right? Things you use now that would probably be digitalized. Is that everyone? Anything else? Anything you think about? Yeah. Anyone who has any reflections? It's so quiet. You just, oh, Carolina. So, how about I let you talk in smaller groups? So, I'm gonna look back quickly on the week then. Let's consider ourselves checked in. Remember to throw the tennis ball. And we have been prototyping, you have been mapping your assumptions, generating hypotheses, and done some prototyping. It's been really interesting to read all your, oh, we've got to find one telephone in the chat. So you've been prototyping. It's been very interesting to read all your assignments. So I'm gonna send you into smaller breakouts to do reflection, okay? So when you are out, especially at this phase, I would say it's more important than ever to move around in the reflection and doing and reflecting and learning. So you have a hypothesis, you go out, you prototype, you come back, you try again, but you have to, of course, really reflect in the meantime, because otherwise you're going to probably go out and test the same thing again, right? So I think you all have so many different experiences from this. So now I'm going to practice reflection again. So on your own, for a minute or two, think about this week's learnings. What did I learn about myself? About innovation, about interviews, framing your insights, anything about the hypothesis, you know, reframing, testing, whatever you have been doing in and reflect in smaller groups. I will send you out, and you can of course choose if you want to be quiet for the first 1 or 2 minutes, or if you're gonna start immediately, I will leave that up to you, okay? So, breakout rooms coming up. Let's see where we have. Make sure. Give me a second to arrange you. Okay, so you're going to be 3 and 4 in the breakout rooms, and I'm going to send you out and see you in about 10 minutes. Bye. Welcome back all. I hope you had some nice discussion and learnings. We lost all the guys. Oh, here they are. Okay, so anyone who wants to share something from this reflection, any learnings or something you want to share with the other groups?
In our group, we talked a little bit about this assumption matrix and how you can organize your assumptions by known and unknown and risky and not so risky. And I think all 3 of us found that really helpful to organize your own thoughts and know which assumptions are the most urgent ones to test.
Yes.
And we also talked about deadlines and short periods when you have just 2 minutes and you should be very fast to draw the only main things about your project. Not to be a perfectionist, but just to show the main idea.
Very hard.
I think for me, it was super interesting to realize when prototyping that a small detail that I had in my prototype showed out to be super vital to the target group. They kind of changed my whole idea, actually.
Good learning. Any final words before I leave the room to Magnus?
So hello. So I think that crawling the story is very good way to convey a message to the audience. Rather than using a lot of slides, PowerPoints, or speeches, etc. And I myself not very good at technology, but I plan to use the pen and paper, make some drawings by hand first, and I'm exploring some tools. Just as a storyboarding, etc., to make the drawings.
Great, thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah, I really actually enjoyed the feedbacks from the other participants. That really gives me really insight and how people see the different aspect of my project, and of course the other one as well. So that's and making feedback is more difficult than having it. So I'm actually enjoying it.
Also very interesting reflection. Yeah, can be quite hard. So thank you all. I'm going to leave the room to Magnus, who will let you know more about himself. So just go.
Thank you, Anna. Nice to meet you all. I'm Magnus Bergmark, and I will start my presentation as a backdrop for when I speak. I'm currently working as head of X Labs on Telia. That is one of Europe's largest mobile operators and telcos, and we're part of the division X, which is Telia's incubator and accelerator platform for new products, service areas, and innovations. And I'm going to talk quickly about my background, where I come from, and a very short story about what we do in Telia X Labs. So just to frame what kind of innovation work I'm involved in and leading. And then I'm going to go into talking about product experience versus product perspective versus customer experience perspective, and how we, from the experience perspective, work with customer-centric innovation. I will mention shortly about concept and proof of concept, even though I know that you've been talking about these areas and working about these areas, but then in the end I will emphasize and go more deeply into the MVP phase, the minimum viable product phase. So first off, about me, I love tinkering with things. I've always loved building things, and when I see interesting small innovations or solutions online, physical experiments, I love to go into the garage and try them out for myself. And my general approach is that most things can be usually picked apart and improved. There's usually a more elegant solution. Things can be more brilliantly designed and to meet our expectations in a nicer way as users or consumers. And that is very much the approach I've been carrying with me my whole life. And I actually started a web agency in the 1996. So now you can start guessing sort of the age I might be in. But that was a great experience. Me and my friend Kalle, we went off and started this company. And it was the best learning experience in my life, I would say, to suddenly having to take responsibility for all of the areas surrounded with being an entrepreneur, having employees, and having a scalable business. And when I left it 5 years later, we were 36 people, and we had merged with a large agency network that did an IPO. Most recently, I was working at a design and innovation firm called Dobermann, and for 3 years I was the managing director of the innovation arm Dobermann Forward, where we...
Magnus, sorry, we don't see the full screen. We don't know why.
Oh,
So it seemed to have some kind of dark.
that's bizarre. Okay, I'll stop sharing and start sharing again.
Sorry, because there might be information coming later that we couldn't.
Yeah, sure. Is this better?
No.
You still have it.
We see the full in the left, sort of when you share now.
Screens. Interesting. I'm not entirely sure how to solve that. Oh, wait. Just a second. I'll do this, and then let's try this instead. Yeah, I was managing an investment firm, and we invested in 3 years. We invested in about 15 early stage startups that we also engaged in as design and innovation partner. And then I've been working a lot with Telia as a customer, and they asked me to come and help them to shape and start X Labs. And then I got the opportunity also to get the job as head of X Labs. So that's what I'm doing today. And X Labs, we work also in a very early stage of exploring, piloting ideas and innovation opportunities. And we do a first stage of scaling and incubating them. Very much about reaching a minimum viable product and getting external proof points that this is worth scaling and has business potential in some area. And some things we're currently working on. Does this work now? Or do you still just see part of my screen?
Might be a few things, but go.
We're working with one innovation track called Sustainability Insights. And here we utilize our data insights platform, where we can see movement in our networks without seeing any individual or any personal data. This is aggregated data, but we can see the movement and thereby also calculating the accumulated carbon emissions from different modes of transport. And we're developing a service where we'll be able to both see and simulate how changes in your travel patterns as a company or municipality or region would decrease the accumulated carbon emissions, and then you can create action plans to actually make those changes in your travel patterns with different kind of mobility services. We also work in exploring how we could minimize the friction and make it easier to go into circular consumption and circular business models. We have very good systems, both for tracking things. We have platforms for IoT, and we also know a lot about the subscription business model. So we can actually help startups and other companies to offer their consumers very interesting subscription services instead of the more dominating model today, where a lot of products end up in landfill due to overproduction. We're also exploring how we can simplify everyday things like setting up a Wi-Fi device, pairing smart home devices and gateways to your network, and to deliver a zero-touch solution to that. So that were a few examples of what we're working on, and now we're going into talking about how we innovate in an experience, a customer experience perspective. But first, a bit of background. A more common perspective on marketing comes from the industrial perspective, where you would see an innovation as something many times a component that you can patent. And when you put a number of those components into a system, it becomes a product. And then you use marketing to sell the product, or actually advertising. But that's generally what is perceived as marketing, even though marketing is a much broader perspective of actions. But that's the general idea. And this was so successful for decades, and this very much defined us as consumers. But then things started to happening when this was established as the most dominating system. And And you had commoditization of services, where we less and less are interested in what is inside or under the hood of things. We don't repair them as much anymore. We buy them to use them and then throw them away or recycle them. And the age of consumerism was upon us, where we started defining ourselves as individuals more and more through how and what we consume. And that also meant that we started going into a mind shift as consumers. And then we got internet, and we started to experience all of these digital services and interactive experiences. And when traditional marketers started looking at these digital channels or internet generally, the first idea was that they could create engagement in a free media channel so that consumers would start buying more products from them. But at the same time, what we experienced as consumers was that the things we own end up owning us. And you start caring less about the mechanical quality in the product and how long it will last. And it starts sort of becoming much more of a problem to actually own and deal with the things you have. So if you look at the whole customer journey around the car and everything that can happen and will happen when you own a car, there are so many interactions and touch points. And this is actually what you start caring about much more as a consumer, the experience this delivers to you. And then we started getting wonderful examples of this. And companies like Apple, for instance, have been pioneers in delivering very elegant and brilliant solutions to this. So what it is much more a focus on the customer experience and the system built to deliver this experience to us. And this is the customer-centric model, and it's proved to be a very successful way of finding, innovating, and delivering value drivers. So we're in the era of the consumer, where it's better at most times to look at anything that you deliver into the world as something that is surrounded by a service that your user interact with. And that is why you also want to build a user relationship, and you want to expand your business around the users in an ecosystem. And as you may well know, Amazon and Alibaba are brilliant in showcasing this, to say sort of, okay, you're our customer, we can deliver anything to you. And what you remember as a customer over time is the highs and lows. When you are a bit more delightfully surprised by how good the experience delivered to you, or when you're really frustrated, what you expect from the value promise, from the communication and the brand, if you just deliver on the expectations, you will be a meh brand. In the end, you might well turn into being sort of the fifth favorite, getting picked out of the shelves of the most common superstores. You have to...
We can't see on the right, just so you know, so you might want to say what we see there. Sorry.
Can you see it now?
No.
Still not. This is a nuisance, isn't it?
No, we see what the customer, yeah, keep it that way. Just...
Yeah, I'll keep it this way. So what the customer remembers is the highs and lows. A brilliant product that ends up having a flaw, or there's something wrong with it, that can be totally acceptable for us as consumers. And then we go to it with it to customer service. And if we get treated very poorly in customer service, we will start to get very frustrated and pissed off. And if that occurs on several times, we will end up really being annoyed and frustrated with the brand, regardless of how great their products are. And I think most of you are very well aware of this already. I think you can all describe some of the brilliant small differences between, for instance, Uber and a traditional taxi company. Because if you look at the business plan of these companies on paper, they would pretty much be the same thing on how they get revenue streams. But does anyone have an example of what Uber or Lyft, if you may, delivered to us as very clever parts of the experience that you didn't know that you wanted so much? Please speak up if you have any reflections on that.
Reviews and ratings.
Able
Yes.
to see where the driver is.
Real-time data.
You're absolutely right. Those small things, where is the cab? I'm in a hurry. Or that you don't have to deal with payment. You just step out of the car like a rock star entering the red carpet. This takes very good insights and a great respect for all of the emotional points during actually consuming the service that they provide. And the understanding for those details, and as someone in your check-in actually exemplified that it could be one feature, it can be one point that you want to look for that will make your service be so much more appreciated and to be experienced as the smart choice, the new choice, the thing you always wanted but didn't know, and the thing that makes you think, why wasn't it always like this? This is so much simpler. So that is very much what we look for in our design processes. So the way we approach this to reach product market fit is first off, concept development. I will mention a bit about that, proof of concept, and then minimum viable product. So first of all, concept. Make sure that you address a problem that engages you, that you're passionate enough about to work with for a long period of time. The average time from startup to unicorn is about 7 to 8 years. So success doesn't come overnight. You need to reach a point where you start scaling. And it can be problems like you want to address that people are getting more and more alone in the world, or that too much products go to landfill, or something smaller, like hate standing in line every day, and something you see could be much more automated or improved. And then you have to really understand how people go about the problem today. What do people do to solve the problem? And what are the substitutes that you're actually competing with when your solution is presented on the market? And then make sure to build an aligned team with all of the competences and talents that you need, and make sure that you're all aligned in what the core problem is and stay in the problem. Go back to the insights you had in the customers and look if your solution is actually going to solve this for them in a clever way, or if you got too lost in technology or business development. And then, of course, to conceptualize, prototype, and frame your value proposition. What is the very core of the most important feature of your product in the first version that you need to deliver for this to be successful? And when you're aligned on that, you go into trying to prove this concept to see if your hypothesis works. And the best way is to do it as quickly and cheaply as possible. Many of you may have heard the story about how Airbnb started. A bunch of designers that have lost a roommate, so they had a free room, and they knew that it was a design conference in their town. And from experience, they knew how expensive and hard it was to find good lodging when there was a big design conference they wanted to visit. So they created a homepage where they made advertising for the opportunity to rent this Airbed room from them. And they got customers. And they were really nervous. What will they think? Do they think we're creepy to rent out a room? We'll be there. What kinds of people will do this? Everything that is very much still true for anyone who starts renting or becomes or looks for lodging through Airbnb, that is built in and designed into their service. And let's really, really hope that they survive the effects of COVID and the decrease in global travel. I know they're suffering, but it is a brilliant and wonderful service. And this is also an example, pretty much like Uber, that has also been recognized for that they don't own the actual hotels or they don't own the cars. So no huge capital investments, but a brilliant service layer on top of an existing infrastructure. And as you go, you will also understand your business model. This isn't a business model map. I don't know if you can see this. I can zoom in. But and I will share these slides with you. But here you can see the razor and blade business model, for instance. That was pretty much invented by Gillette in the early 1900s and has since then been copied by, for instance, Hewlett Packard, who understood the value in selling toner, printer toner, Nespresso machines, same business model. You sell an underpriced hardware to consumers, and then they have to basically start subscribing to the supplement you need. So it's very interesting to see sort of these different types of business models and how they grow out from the experience delivery system that you create. So what you need to understand is that when in the points you deliver the most value to your users, customers, that is also the point where you should make sure to get them to sign up or to start paying or becoming a paying customer in a model that is very harmonic with the way you deliver your value to them. And when you reach that, you have a proof of concept. You know your customers and market, you've proven that your technology works, you understand your business model, it seems to work, you're doing it on a very small scale with your first friendly customers. Now it's time to reach product market fit. Now you have to build your minimum viable product that can be launched on a bigger scale to a market. Product market fit is a difficult thing to define. I like this quote that I learned on the Slush conference some years ago. They had designed a KPI. This came very much from the research from the team behind Slack. They started asking people about different products, how disappointed they would be if they could no longer use them. And if less than 40% say that they would be very disappointed, these are not strong growth companies. So this is on the level of value you have to deliver to people. And this is how much you need to be an everyday delight to everyone with your solution and service. And what we do to find that is to work as lean and cheap as possible, to explore in the experience layer, in the defined key touch points, how this can be a new and wonderful function and feature. We make sure to build the whole stack below, but cheap and fast. So we don't just fantasize up in a fluffy concept, but we build from the stack up, from the systems, the integrations, the solutions, and maybe it's an app or a website or an IoT device or hardware. We want to prove that it works all the way down with the technical and legal aspects of things, but we want to prove it before we scale. Because in the end, you have scaled an entire corporation, and that is, of course, very demanding and expensive. And you shouldn't go into scaling this big system before you know that it works well. So first of all, understand that your first version is your key feature. This is the first version of Spotify. It looks horrible. It looks like something from an operating system, but it delivered something to all of us that made us decrease pirate copying very much, and it was all music on demand. Today, they have, of course, grown into a full, wonderful service with a lot of aspects to it. They have podcasts. They have smart ways of paying. You can have family accounts. They're starting with video clips. They have even more music, and they're pretty much becoming the new version of a record label. But that takes time, and they've scaled iteratively together with their users and customers. And to mention two examples of projects I've been working with, I unfortunately can't show you what we're working with in Telia right now. So these are from companies that I worked, startups I worked with when I was the investor. The first one is hidden behind a door in a rather shady back street of Manhattan. And behind this door, you actually enter their new store. It's called Hayware, and it's prescription glasses with a promise that you will get new prescription glasses for $30 under 30 minutes. And that's because they realized that all of the optician apparatus and machines are today so small and cheap that you can fit them all within one optician's office. So you can have the full sign up, doing sort of getting service from an optician that can be on link, reading out what the apparatus tells you, and then they manufacture your glasses and you get them within actually 20-25 minutes. So this is their current MVP lab, and they're optimizing the service, and they're letting test customers in, a few every day, to test and deliver and try and understand how they can improve and build this into a full scalable solution that will then be more going into franchise in the US, which is a market that is still very much up for disruption when it comes to glasses. Another example, and here's a movie I can probably play. This is the very first version. You see a smartphone taped to the chest of the guy exercising. This is a company called RaceFox, and they provide an AI coach for cross-country skiing and running. So they've been teaching their machine learning algorithm movements, and they've been working with top athletes for many years. And we have helped them design and shape the first consumer version of the product. And again, the team immersed themselves very much into this, iterating, testing, trying, running, becoming the customer themselves. So now you can use RaceFox, and it will give you real-time feedback in your headphones when you run to improve your techniques. So it will tell you sort of to stretch up more or to take smaller steps, and it will give you guided exercises to improve your running technique in ways that at least I had no idea that I can improve in, without pushing, without sort of getting that result-driven traditional way of doing it, but rather telling you to relax, just listen to and follow my instructions, and you will become a much better runner, avoiding injury in the long time. So two examples of companies working really much to perfect the MVP and the value delivery system, and well on their way to reach success. So to end up, just a summary of the three major phases. Wow, there's a, sorry, that's not good. Concept development, stay in the problem, ensure that your team are aligned on the problem, visualize and test out a hypothesis. Make sure that you prove that your concept works, that you can deliver this. And then to make sure when you build your MVP, build cheap and fast, iterate to reach the product market fit, and focus on the core touch points. And basically today, all scaling growing companies, they say that they never leave this stage. That's it. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Magnus. And you will also be invited to the Slack group, so you can ping him for next week's assignment before, during, after, if you have any questions for your own sort of a project. Now we're going to send you into breakout groups, and you're going to get, I'm going to give you a bit more time because last time was a bit rushed. So you have 20 minutes to think about what could be potentially your MVP, and then take the opportunity to share. We're going to have groups of approximately 4 this time. So, and ask, have a discussion, ask for input. You really use each other's sort of knowledge and experience on this. Because the week's task will be around the MVP, but of course you will not have time to do an actual MVP, but it's more of a theoretical level at this point. But so I'm gonna just show you here. I'm gonna send you into breakouts, and you're gonna think about your MVP, what it could be, and then share in your group and ask for suggestions, feedback. Okay?
Both yours to same room, please.
Yeah. I rearranged, so I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Hi all, welcome back. So I kept Magnus here so he can give potentially maybe some feedback or tips and tricks to you. Anyone who wants to share from your sessions? Do you have any ideas?
I would just like to say that it's incredibly diverse, the type of profiles and the diversity on the projects, that I feel it quite enriching to hear to outside perspectives from someone who has no clue about your project or your business or anything like that, to look at your problem from a fresh eyes. I think that's quite enriching.
I think for me, in the discussion and also having read through the learning kit once more, it's a bit blurry still, the difference between the prototype and the MVP. And then I don't know, it's kind of I don't know, in the human nature of being hesitant of really getting into the next mode of doing something that can be used, even, you know, it's not the thing that you want. So I think there's some, I don't know, some thinking patterns that are there that have been there for too long that keep you away from doing an MVP. And it's, as Günther was saying before, a very diverse thing. So what is a prototype for a process? What is a prototype? Oh, what is an MVP for a process? What is MVP for an app or a digital service? So it's quite, yeah, it's challenging and it's a bit confusing still for what stage we are in and what is actually the step from prototype to MVP.
Magnus, any thoughts on that perhaps?
Yeah, generally, I mean, it's difficult. It depends, of course, how you deliver your service. But generally, I would say a prototype is usually just a key part of the product and something that you usually have as inventor or as owner. You have to be there to be in the room and you test the prototype. The first minimum viable product you should be able to send out to an entirely oblivious and neutral representative of the user, and it should just be, it's the first version. You leave the customer alone with it, and everything needs to work, and then you need to you can't have everything fully working. You have to have the key components working, but it should stand on its own.
Yeah, I think that is a good reflection. And then the key components, I think defining these is also something that you need to be very aware of. But what is it that will give the user then the core benefit or make understand what the core of the idea or the new thing is? But it's, I think, the first usable or really like thing that can work on its own. I think that helps me a bit more to work on it. Thank you.
And for me, it was also really interesting to tell about my idea in my group. And while I was telling about my product, I understood that I want to put all great ideas in one. And it's so difficult. Just maybe I will start with a simple step at first, check it, try it, and then only after it will work, not properly, but it will work, I will start putting a little bit more on it, because now it's a huge idea, because I want, okay, people need this, it's a problem about this, and I think, okay, about this, and while I was telling about this, I understood, oh my God, it's even difficult to just tell people about my idea. What people who will use this product will also feel this pain about, okay, you can do this, but be more, just try to do it more simple and simple steps.
Yeah.
I have a question for Magnus. When you're in the MVP phase that you can see if the whole project is worth pushing, or at which stage of the process do you think you should just let it go and say, okay, where I'm going is just not going anywhere and I'm just gonna lose time. You have to go all the way to the MVP. That's when you get actually the feedback of, okay, the key features I tested is just a mess, so I just should stop, or is it already in the prototype phase when you say, okay, because it's kind of tricky. And from the prototype to the MVP, you kind of hope that the findings you have in the prototype that you put in the MVP makes the whole thing work. And when do you should know you should stop on an ID when you know it doesn't working?
Yeah, I mean, I am aware also that these phases do overlap, and then it's semantics. But we strive always to be as economical as possible. And what I try to remind people is that if we end up realizing that our idea wasn't a good solution, it wasn't feasible, you can understand, oh, we can't do this from integrity perspectives, or it's super expensive, then we have to abandon that first idea, that first prototype. The problem is still there. It was just our idea for a solution to the problem that was wrong. So then we pivot into another angle, and that's what I mean by making sure that you understand the underlying problem that you're actually solving for people. It's like one example, for instance, could be like, it's more and more popular in the Nordics to subscribe to a bag of groceries with a recipe that gets delivered to your door every week. And this is for families with children, and what you sell is time. You don't have to plan, you don't have to go to the store, you don't have to be stressed. When you come home as two working parents, you have everything you need, you follow the recipe, you cook a nice dinner. And what you subscribe to is actually time. So then the idea for solving that problem for a family with children, it can be the wrong idea, but they will still have the problem. So then change your idea and try something new. That's sort of the perspective I'm trying to push.
Magnus, this is Gunther. What's your view on companies or situations when a technology has been developed, but it has been developed from an internal facing point of view? So there has been no customer insight, no product market fit analysis, anything like that. So we develop a technology because we feel is the right thing to do. We invest time and money, we have it, and then it's like, okay, how do we make this technology into a product? I believe I'm probably not the only one who has gone through this, especially when it comes to large companies. What's your take on that? Like, how is the best way to frame it in terms of doing reverse engineering, and then try to see what could be the potential customer insight where you can then tap into that technology, which is obviously not the right approach, is a wrong approach, but given the fact that you already invested time and efforts in order to not just leave the idea die. So do you know any framework or process on how to go back in time and then see how your technology could then tap into a customer problem?
Yeah, I mean, I experienced that. We are also, of course, a very engineering-driven organization. So there are definitely a lot of examples of solutions looking for problems. And from my experience, some of them do solve a problem cleverly. We have just been working with one. And what we did was that we started packaging the value proposition around it, what we thought to people who had this problem. And then we started meeting with them and talking to them and pitching it to them, basically. And we realized that this is not the problems they're having. But you know what? What we have is still a part solution of of another problem they have. So it should move. We should market this and package this in a different way. So I have no better way than having all of these things collide with reality and bring the people who feel so dearly about them into the room, meeting the people it's intended for, and have them gain a deeper understanding for that this is actually not a problem that they have. Put the customer in the room. And you can do it through videos or interviews, and maybe you can't have meetings all the time, but it's a very fast track to I've been doing that. I remember we worked with an insurance company and bank many years ago, and they had all of these ideas, and then I showed them some videos we'd done on the field, and they realized, oh, our customers have like 5 banks and insurance companies, and they create their own systems to keep track of all these things. We're not the only bank and insurance company in their life. So it's so easily blinded by this, but it's a very common thing.
Any final question or reflection? Grab the opportunity.
Okay, sorry, you mentioned that from startup, just for a great unicorn, you have to spend 7 or something years.
That's the average.
But when you are not building something like Elon Musk or something like that, and you need just like Airbnb, just a website, I think it's really short period. And now, because people, and as you also mentioned about time, and when you don't have to spend time for searching these flats or some rooms or houses, you go to this website. And nowadays, I think people in startups spend less time from start to finish. And I'm wrong. Because
no, I was expressing the average. It's a statistical truth. What I don't know, but what I suspect you refer to are services that turn consumers into products, like TikTok or social media platforms that have a viral spread. But we're getting a bit more aware and hesitant about those, because if you're not paying for something, you are the product.
I will invite Magnus to the Slack group, so you can also continue to discuss. But I'm aware of everyone's time, and I don't want to run over too much. So this week, of course, it's about the MVP, and we realize you're not probably going to be able to do an MVP in that sense. But think about what it can be. Keep working, keep asking your peers. Could it be a landing page, a blog, a poster, advertisement? Anything that you can think of. And you just share it to us by saying, like, how did you share it? What did you do? And it's more of reflection around it rather than an actual MVP. Unless you, of course, have some kind of way to do it, then we'll be, of course, happy to see that. Upload tasks by Sunday. Ask for feedback on specific things. Make sure to feedback on each other. And next week, we will have Jesper here, who will help you to gain some traction for your ideas. Final thing, check out, of course, in the chat window, write down one thing you're taking with you from today's session. One thing or two that you're bringing with you. Great. MVP will make you rich. One way or the other. Experience, rich. Anything else? Yeah, users need to be able to use your MVP without guidance. Yeah, you can't be there to sort of say, yeah, but it's, you don't understand. Yeah, but you have to, let me show you. Yeah. Ask the question of market fit, yeah. Try it simple, make it fast and cheap, make something someone will pay for, yeah. I really liked, like, if your solution doesn't really work, if you have framed the problem right, probably it's just about going back to the problem and seeing it from another angle, asking for input from people, and if the problem is strong enough, there of course are multiple solutions. I want to try RaceFox now, yeah. Yeah. At first, MVP may look not great, but it will be your first step and it's okay, yeah, exactly. And a lot of you have sort of digital products or process products improvements, so I think you can test part of it. I mean, you can interview your colleagues even more and or send something out. So, tap in your final words and I will leave you now. For many of you, it's really late. I will let you go to sleep or continue with your day wherever you are. So have a nice evening, rest of the day, and see you in a week and on Slack. Bye.